Yeah, welcome to the second chapter of Clifton Chronicles. Only time will tell. When Uncle Stan rose in the morning, he somehow managed to wake the entire household. No one complained as he was the only breadwinner in the family, and any case it was cheaper and more reliable than an alarm clock. Yeah, here they are describing uh, the economical factors of the family. Here, only Uncle Stan used to rose in the morning. Um, he's the only breadwinner in the family. The first noise Harry would hear was the bedroom noise slamming. This would be followed by his uncle tramping along the creaky wooden landing down the stairs and out of the house. Then another door would slam as if disappeared into the privy. Yeah, here he's describing the every uh, common lifestyle of an villagers till the as and when they woke up in the morning, generally they enter into their privy as if the Stan is doing the same. If anyone was still asleep, the rush of water as Uncle Stan pulled the chain, followed by two more slammed doors before he returned to the bedroom, served to remind them that Stan expected his breakfast to be on the table by the time he walked into the kitchen. Yeah. He only had a wash and a shave on Saturday evenings before going off to the Palace or the Odeon. What is the Palace? Let's see over here. A public hall for dancing. Yeah. He took a bath 4 times a year. Oh, he took a bath 4 times a day. This means four days and a quarter a day. Oh, 4 times a year and a quarter. No one was going to accuse Stan of wasting his hard-earned cash on soap, as he being the only breadwinner. Maisie, Harry's mom, would be next up, leaping out of bed moments after the first slammed door. There would be a bowl of porridge. Porridge is kind of a meat dish containing oatmeal or other meat or cereal boiled in water. Would stop by the time Stan came out of the privy. Grandma followed shortly afterwards and would join her daughter in kitchen before Stan had taken his place at the head of the table. It seems these people are rushing for to provide the food for Stan as he being the breadwinner of the family. Harry had to be down within 5 minutes of the first slammed door if he hoped to get any breakfast. See, here we are seeing the uh, poor situation as if he been the Harry, if he had been late, he would not have got the breakfast. The last to arrive in the kitchen would be Grandpa, who was so deaf he often managed to sleep through Stan's early morning ritual. This daily routine in the Clifton household never varied when you have only got one outside privy, one sink and one towel, order became a necessity. By the time Harry was splashing his face with a trickle of cold water, his mother would be serving breakfast in the kitchen. Two thickly sliced pieces of bread covered in lard. What's lard actually? Lard is kind of meat, yeah. Fat from the abdomen of a pig that is rendered and clarified for use in cooking. And found four thin slices for the rest of the family means the Harry's mother, Harry, grandma, and grandpa four slices of pieces for four and two for Stan, which she would toast if there was coal any left in sack dump outside the front door every Monday. Once Stan had finished his porridge, Harry would be allowed to lick the bowl. See how what the condition of the Harry would be. He's instead he being a small kid, he had to lick the bowl of the porridge. After Stan finishing his large brown pot of tea was always brewing on the hearth, which grandma would pour into a variety of mugs through a silver-plated Victorian tea strainer she had inherited from her mother. See, the thing that she has inherited from the mother she has been using. All the other members of the family enjoyed a mug of unsweetened tea. And sweetened tea, sugar was only for high days and holidays. Yeah, and they used to use sugar for only for a certain kind of occasions. Stan would open his first bottle of beer, which he usually gulped, means he usually drink down in his one draught, just kind of one drink. He would then rise from the table and burp loudly before picking up his lunch. Oh, like kind of satisfaction after eating something. of his lunchbox, which grandma had prepared while he was having his breakfast: two mermaid sandwiches, a sausage, an apple, two more bottles of beer, and a packet of 5 coffin knives. Once Stan had left for the dogs, everyone began to talk at once. Grandma always wanted to know who has visited the tea shop where her daughter worked as a waitress. Yeah, uh, the Harry's mother, uh, has visited the tea shop where her daughter worked as a waitress. What they ate, what they were wearing, where they sat, where they sat, details of meals that were cooked on a stove in a room lit by electric light bulbs that didn't leave any candle wax. Not to mention customers who sometimes left a threepenny bit which Maisie had to split with the cook when uh, the tip which she got the Maisie did that is not for herself, but instead she had to split it with the cook even. Maisie was more concerned to find out what Harry had done at school the previous day. She demanded a daily report, which didn't seem to interest Grandma. Perhaps because she'd never been to school, come to think of it. She'd never been to a tea shop either. But this Grandma, she was curious of what the condition of her daughter, that is Maisie Clinton. Grandpa rarely commented because after 4 years of loading and unloading an artillery field gun morning, noon, and night, he was so deaf. He had to satisfy himself with watching their lips move and nodding from time to time. This could give outsiders the impression he was stupid, which the rest of the family knew to their cost he wasn't. The family's morning routine only varied at weekends. On Saturdays, Harry would follow his uncle out of the kitchen, always remaining a pace behind him as he walked the dogs. On Sunday, Harry's mum would accompany the boy to Holy Nativity Church, where from the third row of the pews she would bask in the glory of God's treble soloist. But today was Saturday. During the 20-minute walk to dogs, Harry never opened his mouth unless his uncle spoke. Whenever he did, it invariably turned out to be the same conversation they had the previous Saturday. When are you going to leave school and do a day's work, England? Was always Uncle Stan's opening salvo. Not allowed to leave until I am 14, Harry reminded him. It's the law. A book stupid law. If you ask me, I had packed up school and was working on the docks by the time I was 12. Stan would announce as if Harry had never heard this profound observation before. Harry didn't bother to respond, as he already knew what his uncle's next sentence would be. And what's more, I'd signed up to join Kitchener's army before my 17th birthday. Tell me about the war, Uncle Stan, said Harry. However, this would keep him occupied for several hundred yards. Me and your dad joined the Royal Gloucestershire Regiment on the same day, Stan said, touching his cloth cap as if saluting a distant memory. After 12 weeks basic training at Taunton Barracks, we were shipped off to Vipers to fight the Boche. What's this Boche? It's kind of an army kind of thing. Once we got there, we spent most of our time cooped up in rat-infested trenches, waiting to be told by some toffee-nosed officer that when the bugle sounds, we was going over the top, bayons fixed, rifles firing as we advanced towards the enemy lines. This would be followed by a long pause, after which Stan would add, was only of the lucky ones got back to Blighty, all ship-shape and Bristol fashion. Harry could have predicted his next sentence word for word, but remained silent. You just don't know how lucky you are, my lad. I lost 2 brothers, your Uncle Ray and your Uncle Bert, and your father not only lost a brother, but his father, your other granddad. What you never met. A proper man who could down a pint of beer faster than any talker I've ever come across. Yeah. Over here, Mr. Stan is describing the situation of those times where this Stan and Harry's father, Mr. Arthur, when they joined the army, where they were meant to fight with the army, where rifles firing as they advanced. and he describing the luckiness of Mr. Harry. If Stan had looked down, he would have seen the boy mouthing his words. But today, to Harry's surprise, Uncle Stan added a sentence he had never uttered before, and your dad would still be alive today if only management had listened to me. This sentence, Harry was suddenly alert. His dad's death had always been the subject of whispered conversation and hushed tones, but Uncle Stan climbed up as if he realized he'd gone too far. Means it's just the moment he uttered this Mr. Stan shut. Maybe next week, thought Harry, catching his uncle up and keeping in step with him, as if they were two soldiers on a parade ground. So, who was City paying this afternoon? Asked Stan back on script. Charlotte Authentic, Harry replied. They're a load of old cobblers. They trounced us last season, Harry reminded his uncle. Bloody lucky, if you ask me, he said, and didn't open his mouth again. When they reached the entrance to the dockyard, Stan clocked in before heading off to the pen, where he was working with a gang of other dockers, none of whom could afford to be a minute late. Unemployment was at an all-time high. Too many young men were standing outside the gates waiting to take their place. It's like a strife for the job at those times. Harry didn't follow his uncle because he knew that if Mr. Haskins got him hanging around the sheds, he would get a clip around the ear, followed by a boot up the backside from his uncle for annoying the gang. Instead, he set off in opposite direction. Harry's first port of call every Saturday morning was old Jack Tar, who lived in the railway carriage at the end of the dockyard. He had never told Stan about his regular visits because his uncle had warned him to avoid the old man at all costs. Probably hasn't bathed in years, said the man who washed once a quarter, and then only after Harry's mother complained about the smell. But curiosity had long ago got the better of Harry, and one morning he had crept up to railway carriage on his hands and knees, lifted himself up and peeped through a window. The old man was sitting in the first class, reading a book. Old Jack turned to face him and, come on in, lad. Harry jumped down and didn't stop running until he reached his front door. He just ran after seeing Mr. Old Jack Tar calling him. On the following Saturday, Harry once again crawled up to the jug carriage and peed inside. Old Jack seemed to be fast asleep, but then Harry heard him say, why don't you come in, my boy? I'm not going to bite you. Harry turned the heavy brass handle, tentatively pulled open the carriage door, but he didn't step inside. He just stared at the man sitting inside the center of the carriage. It was hard to tell how old he was because his face was covered in a well-groomed salt and pepper beard, which made him look like a sailor on the Players Please packet. But he looked at Harry with a warmth in his eyes that Uncle Stan had never managed. Are you old Jack Tar? Harry ventured. That's what they call me, the old man replied. And is this where you live? Harry asked, glancing on the carriage, his eyes settling on a stack of old newspapers piled high on the opposite seat. Yes, he replied. It's been my home for these past 20 years. Why don't you close the door and take a seat, young man? Harry gave the offer some thought before he jumped back out of the carriage and once again ran away. This gives a sense of discomfort this boy Harry is feeling towards the old Jack Tar because of words that Mr. Uncle Stan has told him. Following Saturday again, Harry did close the door, but he kept hold of the handle. He was just catching the handle there, ready to bolt if the old man as much as twitched a muzzle. They stared at each other for some time before all the, what's your name? Harry. And where do you go to school? You don't go to school. Then what are you hoping to do with your life, young man? Join my uncle on the dogs, of course, Harry replied. Why would you want to do that? Said the old man. Why not? Harry bristled. Don't you think I am good enough? You're far too good, replied old Jack. When I was your age, he continued, I want to join the army, and nothing my old man could say or do would dissuade me. For the next hour, Harry stood, mesmerized while old Jack Tar reminisced about the dogs, the city of Bristol, and lands beyond the sea that he wouldn't have been taught about in geography lessons. Following Saturday, and for most Saturdays, than he would remember. Harry continued to visit old Jack Tar, but he never once told his uncle or his mother for fear they would stop him going to see his first real friend. When Harry knocked on the door of railway carriage that Saturday morning, old Jack had clearly been waiting for him because his usual Cox orange Pippin has been placed in the seat opposite. Harry picked it up, took a bit, and sat down. He, yeah, every as old Jack Tar being so old, he was waiting for a company in those days actually. In past 20 years, he haven't seen anybody. He was yeah, maybe he have seen, but past 20 years he was been in third carriage. So as if the day after he saw Mr. The little Harry, he wanted to build a kind of good relationship with him. So he offered a Cox orange Pippin. Thank you, Mr. Tar, Harry said as he whipped some juice from his chin. He never asked where the apples came from. He just added to the mystery of the great man. How different he was from Uncle Stan, who repeated the little he knew again and again. As the old Jack introduced Harry to new words, new experiences, even new worlds every week. He often wondered why Mr. Thor wasn't a schoolmaster. He seemed to know even more than Miss Monday and almost as much as Mr. Holcomb. Harry was convinced that Mr. Holcomb knew everything because he never failed to answer any question Harry put to him. Old Jack smiled across him but didn't speak until Harry had finished his apple and thrown the core out of the window. What have you learned in the school this week? The old man asked. That you didn't know a week ago. Mr. Halcombe told me that there are other countries beyond the sea that are part of British Empire and they are all resigned over by the king. He is quite right, said the old chap. Can you name any of those countries? Australia, Canada, India? He hesitated. And America? No, not America, said old Jack. That used to be the case, but it isn't anymore thanks to a weak prime minister and a sick king. Who was the king and who was the prime minister? Demanded Harry. King George III was on the throne in 1776, said old Jack. But to be fair, he was a sick man, while Lord North, his prime minister, simply ignored what was taking place in the colonies. And sadly, in the end of our kith and kin took up arms against us. But we must have beaten them, said Harry. No, we didn't. Not only did they have right on their side, not that that's a prerequisite for victory. What does a prerequisite mean? Yeah, these cute questions of this little Harry made him Mr. Tar interesting. To this question he answered, required as a precondition, said old Jack, who then continued as if he hadn't been interrupted. But they were also led by a brilliant general. What was his name? George Washington. You told me last week that Washington was the capital of America. Was he named after the city? No. The city was named after him. It was built on an era of marshland known as Columbia, through which the Potomac River flows. Is Bristol named after a man too? No, chuckled old Jack, amused by how quickly Harry's inquisitive mind could switch from one subject to the other. Bristol was originally called Bridgetown, which means the site of a bridge. So, when did it become Bristol? Historians differ in their opinions, said the old Jack. Although Bristol Castle was built by Robert of Gloucester in 1109, when he saw the opportunity to trade wool with the Irish. After that, city developed into a trading port. Since then, it's been a center of shipbuilding for hundreds of years and grew even more quickly when the Navy needed to expand in 1914. My dad fought in a great war, said Harry with pride. Did you? For the first time, old Jack hesitated before answering one of Harry's questions. He just sat there, not saying a word. I'm sorry, Mr. Tor, said Harry. I didn't mean to pry. No, said old Jack. It's just that I haven't been asked the question for some years. Without another word, he opened his hand to reveal a sixpence. Harry took the little silver coin and bit it, something he had seen his uncle do. Thank you, he said before pocketing it. Go and buy yourself some fish and chips from the dockside cave. But don't tell your uncle, because he'll only ask where you got the money. In truth, Harry had never told his uncle anything about old Jack. He'd once heard Stan tell his mum the loony ought to be locked up. He'd asked this Monday what a loony was, because he couldn't find the word in the dictionary. And when she told him He realized for the first time just how stupid his Uncle Stan must be. Not necessarily stupid, Miss Monday counselled, simply ill informed, therefore prejudiced. I have no doubt, Harry, she added, that you'll meet many more such men during your lifetime. Some of them in far more exalted position than your uncle. Yeah, let us continue with the third chapter again in another video.